Hello and welcome to SweetSpotDFS. It's your DFS preview for the 2021 Northern Trust. In this preview, I'm going to go over all the pieces of information you need to know prior to building your DFS lineups. If you want to see what I'll be covering in depth, I do have timestamps in the description below. You can also find them on YouTube's progress bar. All you got to do is hover over and you'll see them there. But let's stop wasting time and get right into this thing. I like to start with the tournament fact sheets. It's a great place to give us general information on the tournament. You get to see how it's set up, course statistics, grass stats, architect, and sometimes the stimp meter, which all those pieces of information are great data points to start your research with. As you can see, the Northern Trust being played at Liberty National Golf Course. Now, the PGA Tour has played here before. 2019 is one of the years, as well as 2013. The President's Cup, I think, was played here in 2017, but I don't really find that data relevant because that's all team play. And if it's not team play, it's individual match play. So you're not really going to get I would make the argument, because I'm always pro, course history. I would make the argument because someone has played there, they're going to be more comfortable playing there, that kind of stuff. But when we look at like results or anything like that, it's really hard to determine how well they actually played at that golf course because you're just playing against another person. And match play it's a whole different beast, a whole different animal than stroke play. So personally, I would refrain from using President's Cup data, but if you do find it relevant with your research, then go for it. Like I don't want to discourage you too much, but to me, I'm a competitive golfer. It wouldn't make sense to me. It's a par 71, 7,400 yards. That's a little bit above average, I think, when it comes to yards per par. It's not long by any means. It might provide a little bit of a challenge for the shorter hitters because there are some long par 4s. There's a 600-yard par 5. Which if you're not a bomber, you're probably not going to be able to reach. So there is a little bit of advantage being a bomber versus being a short hitter. But I think this course is going to play pretty similar to a lot of the golfers in the field. Average green size, 4,600 square feet. That's kind of small. I think on average, PGA Tour is like 5,500 to 6,000 square feet. So we're a little bit under that, meaning, I'm not a huge fan of proximity stats, but it wouldn't be terrible to look at. I know there's some long approaches. I don't have the same sentiment as a lot of the DFS industry out there when you're looking at like certain yardages, like 200 to 225, that kind of stuff. Not my favorite cup of tea when it comes to trying to determine what stats to look at. Those should just all be tiebreakers. You should not create your core around those types of data points. But yeah, for tiebreakers, yeah, I have no problem, using that or using those pieces of information for that purpose, but not for your core. Going through this, number of sand bunkers, not that big of a deal. Number of water hazards, 13. I don't know the exact number offhand, but when I did the course breakdown, I really didn't see 13 holes where you had to worry about water. Sure, there was water on the golf or on that hole, but it shouldn't be in play. Like it shouldn't really come. Yeah, so it says 12 holes where water is in play. I don't really necessarily find that true either. To me, from just memory, I think it's like 7 or 8 holes where you really have to contend with water either on your drive or on your approach. So yeah, this can be a penalizing golf course if you spray the ball, but for the most part, I didn't see anything that, it's not a tight track. Water is just not going to be as much in play as it shows here. We're looking at bent grass everything. I don't know what the different types of strains here, A4 versus L93. They're, different strains are built for different reasons, for different purposes. Like your tees, your fairways, that type, with L93. This could be a grass that doesn't grow very fast. And then the A4 could be a grass that does grow fast because with bent grass, you need to take care of it more so than any other strain of grass. You can cut it really low. You can make the greens really fast. But it requires a lot of water. It requires a lot of maintenance. but you usually get your best surfaces with bent grass. I absolutely love bent grass golf courses. I think putting remains true. Some people think there's grain to look into bent grass. Personally, I don't see it. I mean, whenever I putt, I see the topography and I base off, my reads from that, and it's pretty much true. I don't necessarily care about, grain. But I will say this, bent grass does follow the sun. So it will, wherever the sun is located, the tip of the grass will point towards that area, which it really isn't that big of a deal. So don't get worried about that. I just like to show off a little bit with my knowledge of grass stats, or just turf grasses. But yeah, bent grass. Look at your bent grass stats, which we'll do in this video as well. And then we're looking at Bob Cupp and Tom Kite as your architects. It's interesting. So changes to the course since 2019. I'll let you read this. And by the way, anything in this video, as I cruise through this, I recommend, or I suggest, just pause the video and read it. You can always rewind and that kind of stuff, but I kind of want to go through this faster than usual. And you know how I like to extend time. So yeah, I don't have anything else to say. These are your data points that you can start your research with. Let's go ahead. I want to give you guys an idea just what to expect when it comes to weather. Just want to show you, we're looking at Jersey City, New Jersey, going down to Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. You can see thunderstorms are in the area the entire time. I don't necessarily care about rain when it comes to looking at weather. It's all about wind. But with thunderstorms forecasted, that just means we might get preferred lies, meaning scoring might be a little easier than usual, but we might get delays as well. So obviously you see thunderstorms, and that will kind of break up a rhythm. So maybe scoring won't be as good. It's one of those things, like when you see this, makes predicting what the weather, well, actually predicting weather is almost impossible anyways, but when it comes to performances on the golf course, it's hard to determine what's going to happen and what isn't. We know with thunderstorms, softer course conditions. Usually also with thunderstorms, no wind, because if you think about it, as a storm comes through, it usually leaves like a low pressure behind it, which doesn't really provide a lot of wind. So again, scoring conditions might be up. You see where I'm going with this? Is like it's up, it's down, it's up, it's down. I don't know. I'm leaning towards we're going to see lower scores than usual at Liberty National, not just at this event. We'll get into that shortly, but when it comes to just Liberty National, I think when we go and review past results, lean towards a lower score. That's all I want to get at. And you can see like the wind isn't that big of a deal, 5 to 10 miles an hour on Thursday. Friday, we have also 5 to 10. Saturdays, 5 to 10. Sundays, 5 to 10. If you want a more accurate depiction of what the wind's going to do, I would just go to windfinder.com, type in Jersey City, New Jersey, try to find this golf course, and try to determine what the wind's going to do each of the days. Because wind is the biggest factor when it comes to scoring. And as we can see, averages, not that high. So that kind of leans towards lower scores. And as we say that, let's go ahead and just talk about past results. So this tournament is kind of in a rotation. It was played at TPC Boston last year. And the year before that, Liberty National. So obviously we're back at Liberty National. So we don't have to go too far back to see a course history result. So if we focus on just the Liberty National tournaments, obviously 2019 was one year, but we also have 2013. So I'm scrolling through pretty quickly, but you can see all the golf courses up here at the top. We can see that 2013, 2019, Liberty National. So in 2013, 11 under won the tournament. And in 2019, 16 under won the tournament. Now, obviously with the weather that we just saw, the moisture, the possibility of scoring conditions being optimal, I would lean around 15 to 17 under. Now, I said the same thing about the Wyndham Championship last week, and well, I think the two differences here, Wyndham, all Bermuda rough, when that gets wet, when Bermuda rough gets wet, very, very difficult to hit out of. Bent grass, not the craziest, but I will say this, going back to the tournament fact sheets, I forgot to mention this. The The secondary rough is at 3.5, or it's at 3 inches long. Wyndham was at 2.5. And people who hit it in the rough had a hard time getting out of it. And I think that's what lend itself to kind of higher scores than usual. So if that's the case here, I might have to backtrack. Like, again, there are all these forces that are telling me course condition or, scoring conditions are going to be optimal, but then possibly not. I will say bent grass a little easier to hit out of than Bermuda, but any type of grass when it gets long, gets thick, and it's difficult to hit out of. So, best guess. I mean, this is just golf in general, right? I'm still leaning around 15 to 17. I might drop it down to 14 to 17. That sounds more reasonable to me, but I'm expecting lower scores. With all that being said, it doesn't really lend itself to birdie makers, and it doesn't really lend itself to grinded out par golfers. It's going to be a mix of both. So I think if you wanted to look at like major tournaments or just tough tracks like API or the Players or anything like that, if you wanted to use those as the comps and see how well golfers do at those tournaments that might be playing in this one, that's a reasonable way to go about it, because I think that's how these scoring conditions are going to be. So yeah, that's my take on it. The other the other courses are really going to determine the scores. It's really difficult to talk about past years and try to compare it to this one because it's not the same. And we have such a variety of winning scores and stuff like that I don't find it necessary or relevant. Now, I think we have a normal cut. I think it's top 65 in ties. If not, it's top 70 in ties because the top 70 move on to next week throughout these playoffs. I'm just trying to look at Liberty National and what the cut score was. Looks like it was 1 under in 2019. And in 2013, it was even. So I'm sure that's what the cut score is going to be, around even 1 under. If you want your safe lineups, your conservative lineups, go with your grinded out par golfers because that'll give you your best opportunity to get 6-6 through the cut. But you know me, I don't really necessarily care about that. All right, let's go ahead and get into a course breakdown. Now, I have a lot of text up here. I'm going to let you guys read it. I'm not going to cover all of it, but basically I go over each hole, try to determine which shot shape is preferred. If I can see any shot shape work, then obviously I'm going to put any. But if I see where a draw really gives you a benefit, I'm going to put draw. Same thing applies with a fade. So that's how I come up with the certain type of shot shapes. So yeah, I'll let you read holes 1 through 9. I'll scroll down to 10 through 18. Go ahead, read those. But really, I'm more concerned about the pieces of information right here. So I kind of have a little summary box, a little summary matrix, if you want to call it that. It shows you how many holes require a draw off the tee, how many require a fade. Same with approach, pretty even. It looks like when it comes to approach, it's more of a shot maker's golf course. So those golfers that can shape it both directions probably would benefit here if their game is, if they have at least their B game with them. But if someone is just hot and only has one shot shape, it's fine. There's not one you really have to weigh over the other. So we don't necessarily have to make a choice of trying to find fade golfers versus draw golfers. It applies. Both shot shapes are just fine. I have the yards per par, 104. This is kind of new. I haven't added this before. 4 par 3s, 11 par 4s, 3 par 5s. And I think we have 1 par 5 on the back. Yeah, just one par 5 on the back, 2 on the front. So yeah, it seems like a pretty traditional par 71. And I really don't have anything to say other than that. If there was a dominant shot shape that we want to look at, we look at the golfers with those shot shapes, but we don't have them. So I want to get into the next piece of information, and it's really just going to be talking about grass stats. I don't necessarily start this next part of the video here, but I think this is the best time to do it because once we get into the bucket system, we can determine what our favorite golfers are based off some of this grass stats. So if we sort best overall bent grass, this goes back to 2013. In this field, Jon Rahm, number 1. He has a 55%. Well, I'll cover this part next, but 19.6. That's 5 points better than second place, which is Rory McIlroy. So we have Rahm, McIlroy. I'm not going to go over all of these guys, but you can see this is your top 20 basically in the field. From top to bottom with all the golfers you see, this is your top 20. Is anybody really surprising here? I mean, I guess Matt Kuchar at 6,400. Obviously, in 2021, he hasn't really been playing that great. Jason Day, $7,400. Not great in 2021. Bent grass golf courses. Everybody else, basically 8,000 and above. Minus those 3 golfers. So basically what we would assume. Now, when it comes to their success rate of finishing inside the top 10, Rahm is up there. 55% of his bent grass events, he finishes inside the top 10. So if you need any more persuasion to play Jon Rahm, here's a little more. DJ comes in second at 50%, and then it drops to Rory at 42 and Jordan at 40. So you're only 4 golfers at 40% and above: Spieth, McIlroy, DJ, and Jon Rahm. I'm more likely going to anchor all my lineups around these golfers. I might leave 10% to other golfers, but I think around 90% of my lineups are going to start with either of these golfers, any of these golfers. I do believe bent grass is an important stat to look at this week, and I do think these golfers just fit this golf course pretty decently. You can see the other guys within the top 20. My favorites: Sebastian Munoz, Scotty Scheffler. Kind of feeling Tony Finau this week. We'll see when it comes to looking at the buckets. I do like to see Patrick Cantlay up here. I don't care for Kuchar. I don't care for Snedeker. Fitzpatrick is kind of an odd one. I like him at $7,900, but when it comes to upside, I just don't know how I feel about it. I think Daniel Berger is... I mean, there's a lot of love for Daniel Berger out there. It looks like he's 8th in my model, so I guess I'll give him a little bit of a boost. And I guess Justin Thomas too. $9,800 seems like a pretty good... I wouldn't say a steal, but it seems like a good value. And I think of the only guys up here, I just don't really care for Matsuyama. I mean, I will play him, don't get me wrong. It just might not be at a higher percentage than the rest of the golfers that we see up here. Not Kuchar or Snedeker, but Collin Morikawa and up. So yeah, that's your success rate for top 10 finishers. And then your best 2021 bent grass golfers. Seamus Power won an event. I think it was the Barracuda? Barbasol. The Barbasol Championship. He had won. And that's what's really driving his 2021 average down. So I'm going to exclude him a little bit, but at $7,000, it's not terrible. And I kind of like him this week too. But we have Xander at the top. Then it's Justin Thomas, Shane Lowry. We kind of have a whole different cast. I'm not sure where Jon Rahm is. Oh, there he is. 9th place. So not terrible. And really 5 points separate Xander and Jon Rahm, where overall bent grass, 5 points separated Rahm in 2nd place. So it's pretty tight when it comes to just 2021 stats. Really, any of these golfers I think would be decent plays. Probably, I don't really care to play like a Harold Varner. Vegas intrigues me, as does Palmer. And I don't mind Ian Poulter either. I think that's okay. Yeah, and I'll probably stay away from Shane Lowry, if I'm being honest. I'm not a huge Shane Lowry fan to begin with. Whenever I do play him, he doesn't do well. Whenever I don't play him, he seems to do well. So maybe this is a week where he will do well because I'm not really feeling him. But again, we'll see when it comes to buckets what that'll turn up. But yeah, these are your top 20 bent grass golfers in the field this week. I don't have anything else to provide. Let's go ahead and just jump right into our buckets. So we'll look at the summary here. And I'm going to do this a little bit differently. I'm just going to talk about bucket by bucket and kind of give you the top 3 golfers of each of these buckets. But I'm going to do that after. Because what I want to start out with is just tell you, which golfers you should try to find based off the bucket system. So the bucket system is just historical data looking at the top 10 finishers of this tournament dating back to 2013 and basically seeing what kind of profile they fit into based off of 6 stat categories. And that's last year stats, so their last year finishing position, last week finishing position, tournament history, recent form. I also look at their salaries, and I also look at their strokes gained stats. So all those 6 stat categories, I create buckets for, 6 buckets for each of them. And I'm going to talk about the top 3 of each stat category. So the first one, last year's result. The number 1 bucket are golfers who top 20'd the year before. So that is what you should be looking for when you start your lineups. Golfers who top 20. I'm projecting around 2. I think somewhere between 1 to 2. I think between 1 to 2 is fine. I do show 2.47. That's just finishing inside the top 10. If you're creating lineups, I say pick 1 to 2. Your number 2 bucket, golfers who missed the cut last year, believe it or not. It's a 124 person field, and 70 make it through. I think it's top 65 in ties is still the cut. I think that's still the cut criteria for this tournament. So they're going to be, roughly 60 golfers that are going to be cut this week. That means we have around 60 golfers. I mean, we have 37. We have 37 golfers in that bucket this year. But yeah, that's your number 2 bucket. Now, the success rate isn't very high, but I'm still projecting around, 2 golfers, 2 to 3 golfers inside the top 10, really spending 1 to 2 roster spots on them. And I think that's also where you should start your lineups as well. And then looking at golfers who finished between that 20 to 40 range last year. I'm not projecting as much, 1.5, somewhere between 1 to 2 inside the top 10. And I'm not even really, I guess it's somewhere between 0 and 1. Looks like I would much rather have golfers who did not play last year when it comes down to it. So although this is ranked our 4th bucket, it's just based off the numbers we see here. And really, I guess the tiebreaker, instead of it being the top bucket up here, should have been this one, who just didn't play. So I'm looking around 1 to 2 golfers to start my lineups there. So golfers who didn't play, 1 to 2 of those guys, 1 to 2 golfers who missed the cut last year, and 1 to 2 golfers who top 20. And then fill in your lineups, however you choose from there on. Obviously, you can select any of the other buckets, 20 to 40, 40 to 60, 60, 80, doesn't really matter. But it looks like our slam dunks really are the did not plays, top 20s, and missed cuts from last year. When we look at last week stats, so the last week finishers, when it comes to this tournament, our number 1 bucket are golfers who did not play the week before. And it's an astounding number. Just look. The minimum we've seen inside the top 10 is 5 golfers. And that's pretty easy because the Wyndham Championship usually precedes this tournament every single year. It's not necessarily, the Northern Trust does. And I think the FedEx Cup playoffs used to be a 4 tournament stretch, or I don't know how to say that. There were 4 tournaments within the FedEx Cup playoffs. It was the Northern Trust, then the Dell Technologies, used to be Deutsche Bank as well. And then it went to the BMW and then the Tour Championship. Well, they got rid of the Deutsche Bank / Dell Technologies, and the Northern Trust and that one kind of meshed or melded into each other, but it's still called the Northern Trust. But this tournament, the Wyndham Championship always preceded it. So with that being said, what it's telling us, a majority of golfers who finished inside the top 10 here didn't play at the Wyndham. So that's also where I would start. And again, my minimum is 5 inside the top 10. I actually have a minimum of 2 inside the top 5. And I'm projecting like 7 to 8 golfers inside the top 10, which is insane. But my projections use the strength of field. And the total strength of field is 828 this week. 600 points go towards that, all within this bucket. So I think that's a huge driving force. 100% frequency finishing inside the top 10. I'm going to use 4 to 5 roster spots on golfers who did not play last week. If we want to find some, consolation buckets, we can choose, last week 2s, last week 3s, even last week 4s. So your last week 2s are that 20 to 40 range. So anybody who finished 20 to 40th last week, it's okay if you load up on some of them. Same applies with top 20 finishers last week and golfers who missed the cut. But I'll tell you this, the projections aren't super high. And I'm not even really using half of a roster spot on most of these most of these buckets. For last week bucket 2 and last week bucket 3, sure. 50 out of 100 positions I'm kind of reserving for these buckets, but it's heavily driven by golfers who did not play last week. So keep that in mind. Over the since 2013, that's how long these stats go back. It's heavily influenced by golfers who did not play the week before. So keep that in mind. When it comes to course history, that's another one I like to look at. Your number one bucket, golfers in that 20 to 40 range. So it's not course history, it should be tournament history, because obviously we don't play the same course. So I'll have to update this for, it should say tournament history, not course history. But still, for this tournament, since we've had a rotation of golf courses, still kind of holds true. That 20 to 40 range, that's where you want to be selecting a lot of your golfers from. We're projecting around like 3.5 inside the top 10. Really, I'm using somewhere between 2 to 3 roster spots on that. And really, I guess you could say 2 to 4. 4 would be kind of risky. 2 is safe, but at least 2. Looks like 2 would be a good choice. Our number 2 bucket in this stat category, 40 to 60. So those with a average finishing position between 40 and 60 at this tournament, that's your number 2 bucket. And I'm projecting around 3 inside the top 10, but really only reserving 1 to 2 spots in my lineups for this. And course history 3, 60 to 80 range. So really kind of not the greatest, course history, but not terrible by any means. I'm really just projecting anywhere between 1 to 2, but really reserving just 1 spot in my lineups for that. But those are your 3 buckets. 20 to 40 range, 40 to 60, 60 to 80. That's your average finishing positions dating back to 2015. Actually, it's really dating back to 2013. I'm sorry. Dating back to 2013. And I mean, your best course history has a pretty decent success rate, 18%, but we only have 4 golfers in that bucket this year. So that's why this bucket isn't really popping. And the strength of field isn't very high for this bucket either. So that I'm putting that all into consideration. Really, the last bucket I'm going to talk about is recent form. So your recent form ones, these are okay. So this also goes back to 2013, I think 2014 really. And it's looking at their average finishing position over the last 8 weeks heading into this tournament. Your number 1 bucket, 20 to 40. So it's kind of telling you that recent form matters. Coming in with good recent form is good. This bucket alone, I'm averaging around 4 to finish inside the top 10. And I'm reserving between 2 to 3 spots in my lineup for this bucket. Your recent form 2s, that 40 to 60 average finishing spot. Again, looking at the last 7 weeks. And I'm projecting around 2 and reserving 1 to 2 spots for that. Recent form 3, you're basically your top 20 golfers. Or I shouldn't say top 20 golfers, but golfers with a top 20 average finishing position. That's your 3rd bucket. Same thing. It's just almost an exact copy of bucket 2, recent form bucket 2. Again, projecting around 2.4 golfers inside the top 10, reserving around 1 to 2 golfers from this bucket in my lineups. And they all have 100% frequency rates, meaning they've all finished inside the top 10 dating back to 2014. So it kind of gives you a little bit of confidence to play these. There's always margin of error, like, 85%. I kind of take that into account a little bit too. So keep that in mind. But the last couple of weeks, these buckets that we've gone over have hit, I think at a 95% clip. I want to say over the last 4 weeks, I think 3 or 4 times, maybe 5 weeks, 3 or 4 times, these buckets didn't hit. So keep that in mind. Some can fail. Don't get me wrong. It's golf, but it's a good starting point. I'm gonna save salaries and strokes gained actually no. Let's go over strokes gained first. So I don't like to do strokes gained the way that everybody else does. When I go over strokes gained stats, you're gonna obviously need to find golfers. You're gonna have to find a mix of golfers. We can't just say all approach golfers do well here, or all off the tee golfers, all putters. You can't say that. If you want to build, okay, so SweetSpotDFS, we're always trying to find the optimal lineup. And the only way to do that is to build your lineups according to what past optimal lineups look like. That requires a mix of golfers. Now you can go the safe route and pick all approach, like positive approach golfers or positive off the tee golfers. You're probably never going to win a GPP that way. You're going to have to mix it up and find the golfers that do kind of break that mold of typical DFS industry research. So anyways, I do have a breakdown here. The other buckets are pretty dynamic. These buckets are static, so the rankings never change. Strokes gained 1 are all stats positive. Strokes gained 2, positive off tee, positive putting, and 1 negative stat in between. It's using the 4 strokes gained stats. So it's off the tee, approach, around the green, putting. So for this bucket, approach or around the green is negative. Strokes gained 3, positive off the tee, negative putting. Strokes gained 4, negative off the tee, positive putting. And really, with those 2 stats or with these 3 buckets here, the approach and around the green just doesn't matter to me. Strokes gained 5, negative off the tee, negative putting, and strokes gained 6 is no strokes gained stats, which we have 2 golfers in the field with that, which is surprising. Usually we see none. But the large majority of success comes with the strokes gained 1 buckets. 20% success rate finishing inside the top 10. We have 40% of the strength of field in this bucket. Obviously, it's your best golfers. And we have most of our best golfers here. We're just missing Louis Oosthuizen, essentially. I think he's like our 8th ranked golfer in the world. If he was here, he'd probably provide stats in the strokes gained 1 bucket, like provide more strength of field points towards it. But yeah, I'm projecting around 4.5 golfers inside the top 10 out of this bucket, and I'm reserving probably somewhere between 2 to 3. And if I'm being honest, it's probably going to be like 2 to 4. I'll probably own somewhere between 2 to 4 golfers in that bucket. Strokes gained 2 would be your next best bucket, and I'm projecting 1.8 inside the top 10, which I'm reserving 1 to 2 points or 1 to 2 golfers in my lineups from this bucket. And then strokes gained 3, that's really pretty self-explanatory. All these buckets, obviously your better golfers are here in the top strokes gained buckets. As it goes down, you get your worst golfers. So, and the strength of field also kind of goes down that road. So does your top 5 success rates as well. So it's pretty prevalent. We do want our strokes gained 1 golfers. So all stats positive. And then I'm going to mix the next bucket to talk about to go along with our past optimal lineups. So we'll look at salary buckets. And this is just, again, another way to show you guys how to start building your lineups. You do want 7K golfers. That's our number 1 bucket. More golfers in this bucket show up inside the top 10 than any of the other ones in the salary buckets. So I'm projecting around 2.8 to finish inside the top 10. Probably want somewhere between 1 to 3 golfers to start your lineups with when it comes to 7K golfers. Number 2 bucket, 8K range. So we're projecting 1.9, reserving 1 to 2 spots in our lineups for that. Third bucket is the 10K and above. Now, we've seen a 10K golfer finish inside the top 10 at least twice every single year that DraftKings has done contests for this tournament. And that dates back to 2016, I believe. So, again, at least 2 inside the top 10. Will we get an optimal lineup golfer out of that? Maybe. The Wyndham Championship last week, I told you wanted a 10K golfer. Webb Simpson finished inside the top 10. He was not a part of the optimal lineup. So although, and we also built a lineup with Webb in it, that would have taken down the GPP, but that's really getting specific. When building your lineups, don't refrain from using a 10K golfer. But just know, although the data suggests that we will have one inside the top 10, and possibly you want that golfer to build your optimal lineups around, it's not absolutely necessary. Give yourself a little buffer room, like 20% of your lineups not have a 10K golfer in it. That's probably the smart way to go about it. Or maybe even less, 10%, whatever you're comfortable with. But yeah, those are your top buckets. And I'm going to transition this into our past optimal lineups and then come back to look at all of our best bucket plays out of each one of those. So we'll start going back to 2017 and taking a look, because we do have salaries. So I don't think 2016 had salaries. No. So 2017, we have salaries. Our optimal lineup golfers are those that are in the, have the little black tick marks here. And I believe during this year, it was all based off of finishing points, like finishing spot. So I think you probably could have gotten an optimal lineup choosing like these 6 golfers, which, nope, you couldn't have done that. Maybe not. Because this is 49,600, and it includes all 6 golfers inside the top 10. So maybe this was the optimal lineup, but I'm just building lineups based off of how many top 3 golfers I can get into my lineup, and then mixing up with some other 10K golfers. So this one was 49,800. It used 2 10K and above golfers, 2 7K, and 2 6K. I don't have the DraftKings points to validate that this was the optimal lineup, but it probably was close. So yeah, it's either 2 10K golfers, 2 7 and 2 6, or we didn't have first and second place, but we had third place, 2 third place, 5th place, and 3 6th places. So this would have been 49,600. So when it's the question of leaving money on the table, for 2017, it didn't work out. How about 2018? Yeah, leaving a lot of money on the table got you to the optimal lineup. And unfortunately, I don't have, maybe it was the top 6. I'm guessing that's what it was. Well, this equals 46,200. So I don't know. Oh, it must have been not Adam Scott, Patrick Cantlay. Yeah, this would have been the choice, but I'm just going to give it that. So it was 46,200. Sorry for the confusion. 46,200, no 10K golfers, 1 8 or 2 8s, 3 7s, and a 6. Now, if we wanted to build a realistic optimal lineup, we'd want to substitute one of these with a 10K golfer most likely. That's 48.5. I don't like that. 72. Can we make a jump to 86? We can. So this would have been more realistic. An $11,000 golfer, 2 8s, 2 7s, and a 6. So that'd have been more realistic. But 10, 8, does this work? 49,500. But it's still another 10K golfer, 2 8s, 2 7s, and a 6. So that's your 2018 optimal lineup. So now we actually have points behind it, I believe. Yes, we do. Your optimal lineup here was 9K Patrick Cantlay, 8K Adam Scott, 6, 10, 6, 8. So we had a 10K golfer, 9K golfer, 2 8s, and 2 6s. So now we're diving down into the 2 6s once again. But another 10K golfer. And then 2020, our optimal lineup was a 10, 7, 8, 8, 6, 8. So 3 8K golfers, a 10, a 7, and a 6. So yeah, quite the mix between all the optimal lineups. The common, a 7K golfer and a 6K golfer. We had one instance where it was 1 6K, I believe. I suppose this is another instance. So 2 instances where we had just 1 6K. The other 2 instances, we had 2 6Ks. Obviously 1 7 at least. And actually we had a couple 8s. So the 8K range, a lot of love there. Maybe perhaps that's where we need to be looking when it comes to our golfers in the 2021. So we'll actually go over the buckets. We'll go over our salaries too. So why don't I just sort this? When it comes to our 10K golfers, I mean, we have 7 golfers 10K and above. You've heard me talk about volume-driven buckets where we have like 50 golfers in a bucket or 60, 70 golfers in buckets. Like, yeah, that's definitely a volume-driven bucket. When it comes to 10K and above, 7 is so much more than 5. Usually we have 5 on average. So to me, this is a volume-driven bucket, believe it or not. 7 golfers, 10K and above. I don't want to make the guarantee that we're going to have one golfer in the optimal lineup from here, but it's going to be tough not to convince me otherwise. Definitely going to have one inside the top 10, if not 2. So I think you start your lineups here, and I don't think you have a bad choice. I like Rahm a lot. I like Spieth. I don't mind DJ. He seems like a decent play. I don't like his recent form, to be honest. Colin Morikawa just seems like he can ball strike anything, anywhere. Schauffele I might be a little concerned with. Just a little. Like, I don't know if the hangover from winning the Olympics is over. He obviously looked really bad at the WGC FedEx St. Jude. I don't know about that. And then Brooks is kind of questionable. I did see him hitting range balls today. I wasn't there in person, but just from clips, seemed okay. And I don't think really hitting golf balls is the big thing for him. It's walking the golf course. It's not getting fatigued. It's being able to read his putts, being able to be in awkward places, and not stressing out his knee too much. I do like Rory McIlroy a lot at 10K. So yeah, 10K is a really good spot to go with. And I'm not going to go over all these golfers with their price tags. I just really wanted to cover the 10K because you have to make a choice here. Do you play 10K golfer or do you not? Because, there's a lot of good golfers in the 9K, a lot of good golfers in the 8K. If we look at that summary again, 25% of your strength of field come in the 10K range, 17% of your strength of field come in the 9K, 15% come in the 8K, 28% come in the 7K. So 7K is probably really more important to choose. Well, I should say that. There's 33 golfers in that bucket. That's driving this number up, whereas the 25% we see here are just from high quality golfers. Either way, all I'm trying to show you is everything's pretty close to 20% between those 4 buckets. It's pretty even. You're going to want to select golfers from all of them. So either way, I think starting at 10K is okay, but there's still really good quality golfers in the 9 and the 8K range. But let's go ahead and just start looking at the top 3 buckets of each and kind of going over the golfers that I guess I like. So when it comes to last year ones, that's obviously your top 20s from last year. 2 10K golfers, so if you need to start 10K, boom, you can start right here. But we have a pretty decent range between 8 and 9. I guess it's okay. A lot of 7K golfers. I like Hovland. I like Rahm. I like Scheffler, Berger. I don't mind English. I think he has decent bent grass stats. Let's see. Can we? Oh yeah, I guess we can see it right here. Probably gonna stay away from Kisner. He did win the tournament last week, and I know this is the playoffs. He kind of has to just shake the win that he had last week and just move forward because it's playoffs. But I don't know. I just $7,900. That's not terrible. Whatever. I'll play him, just not a lot. And we have some other good choices. Kisner won. Harman played pretty uninspiring. Kokrak looked very uninspired last week. Henley almost won the tournament, choked it away on the last hole, missed a 5-footer, so I don't know what that's going to do to his psyche. Bubba played terrible last week. Again, we kind of want to avoid golfers who played last week. We want to find golfers who didn't play. So yeah, let's unhighlight these guys and just stick to Rahm, Hovland, Scheffler, Berger even, Cam Smith. Harris English, did he play last week? He did not. So here are our last week's stats. Palmer, Charlie Hoffman, Alex Noren. Those seem like okay plays. Probably going to stay away from them. But yeah, I guess most of our choices are here. If we want to pick the golfers who didn't play last week. And not saying... Remember, the overwhelming majority of golfers inside the top 10 at this tournament over the last 7 years have not played the week before. It's not to say that someone who did play last week won't show up inside the top 10. It's just the data kind of is on the on the side of not playing. And that's cool. I can resist a lot of these guys. I do like the 7 golfers that I have selected here. Let's move on to last year 2 golfers. This is your missed cuts. So Jordan Spieth. I like Spieth this week. I like Morikawa. I also like DeChambeau. I like a lot of these guys, and most of them didn't play last week. You can kind of see that here with the last week ones. In fact, these 8 golfers did not play last week, and I like every single one of them, especially this week. I'm sorry, the 9, including Matthew Fitzpatrick. And then Sungjae, he played last week, but if you skip him, you go down another 7 golfers who did not play last week. So here's your fill of golfers that you can choose from. I like them all. So I don't know where to start there. We'll look more into it with the strategy video tomorrow, but just as a wide angle lens look, I like them all. And then the third bucket here, Xander, I like a lot. I like a lot of these. Again, I like most of them. I don't care for Matsuyama. Connors, I like. Hatton, I like. Poulter, I don't mind for. Keegan Bradley, I like. Maybe this is the time to get on Cameron Tringale. We've all been chasing his first victory. I think he's set up pretty decently for this tournament. So Tringale at $7,300. I wouldn't sleep on him. Same kind of goes with Cameron Davis. So this course isn't super tight, but it isn't wide open like the Rock March Classic that he won. The potential is there to do well. So yeah, that's kind of going to wrap it up for the last year buckets. Looking at our last week ones, we have all of our 10K golfers here. These are all your golfers who didn't play. And we kind of already went through each one of these with the last year buckets, all my favorites, which is basically all of them. I'll narrow these down a little bit tomorrow, but obviously we have to look at our, salary options, all the other buckets to go with it. But when it comes to last week ones, we have a ton of these golfers, 50 in total. So I think so, right? No, not even close. 107? Is that because I don't have it updated? Never mind. Yeah, that's... Okay, I know what it is. It's not 107. And actually, those numbers are going to be skewed a little bit. So my spreadsheet is based off of this. So it goes down a little bit, but not by a lot. There's 72 golfers in this bucket. Still averaging, projecting around 7 to be inside the top 10, and still reserving 4 to 5 spots on my roster for those golfers. It doesn't make any sense though. Why is it just that? That must be off once again. Just doing some validation, which I should have done prior to. 50. There's 50. So where in the heck is it picking up 70 from? Bet I know. I bet I know. Ooh, I'm going to be upset when I see this. No, we're okay. But we're looking at I instead of H. Is that the case is? Yeah. Okay. So this number is going to be a little different. Do a quick formula. You just do control tilde, and then we go II, HH, and it will place all of the IIs with HHs. And now our numbers are updated, which means our buckets are also going to be updated. Now it kind of drops a little bit. So now it's 6.9. And now projecting still, reserving 4 to 5 spots still. So it changes slightly, 50 golfers in that bucket. Good thing we updated that on the fly, because it does change the other buckets a little bit, not by much, but by a little bit. Anyways, 50 golfers we got to choose from. We need to choose somewhere between 4 to 5. golfers from here. Obviously, we have our fill of 10K golfers, a bunch of 9, bunch of 8, bunch of 7s. So yeah, pretty decent lot to pick from. And then the rest of these guys, we're just not sure if we want to select one or not. Last week, bucket 2, not the greatest golfers. I do like Munoz. He did play last week. I mean, these are all golfers who played last week. I do like Munoz. I don't mind Sanjay. $7,800 is actually a pretty good value. I don't care for his bent grass stats, though. So, yeah, maybe not so much on Sanjay. Eric Van Rooyen. I don't mind that. I know he played last week. Didn't really look the greatest, but that's okay. He won the week prior. I think that was a bent grass track. Maybe, maybe not. You would add, no, it wasn't, because you would add 0. Or maybe I didn't update it. That's probably what it was. Anyways, I'm all over the place with this bucket. Let's look at our last week 3s. Let's just move on. Let's get out of here. Last week 3s, Webb Simpson, Adam Scott, Kevin Kisner, Russell Henley, Kevin Na, Siwoo Kim. A bunch of your second place finishes from last week. Which, I mean, this is your top 20 bucket, so obviously, yeah, that makes sense. I actually like this group of golfers a lot. I think selecting one of these golfers would be the way to go, and probably not one that was in the playoff, unless you can make the argument that it really didn't affect him. You know, who looked good, who really didn't have a shot to win. I mean, that would be kind of, to me, Kevin Na and Siwoo Kim. They never really had a shot on hole 18, the 2 playoff holes that they had. So maybe either of those 2 golfers might come through, and maybe it's Kevin Na more so than it is Siwoo Kim, because he has got great bent grass stats. I guess those don't discount Russell Henley. Maybe he can play with a vengeance. Who knows? He has a 21% success rate, finishing inside the top 10. But I mean, like, Simpson and Scott also have really good bent grass stats. So does Brennan Grace, Adam Hadwin, Brendan Todd. Brendan Todd, a lot of love in the industry. I think that's a decent play as well. Let's move on. I don't want to spend too much time here. Just want to show you all the golfers in these buckets. Go to our course history buckets. Looking at course history 1, it's your 20 to 40 average finishing position over the last 5 years. We have 4 of our 10K golfers here, the 4 that I like. So yeah, I think choosing one of these golfers seems to be pretty beneficial. We have one 9K golfer in Cantlay, which is also a good choice. I think he putts much better on bent than he does any of the other surfaces that he's played at. So I do like his chances. And there's also a lot of other good golfers. Like Simpson's good, Casey's good, Patrick Reed is good, especially here. He's won this tournament here before. Finau, Hatton, you know, they have pretty good bent grass stats. So is Jason Day. You know, pretty good choice of golfers here. Looking at course history 2s, 2 other, well, I guess now we have 6 total 10K golfers we can talk about, but we have Schauffele and Brooks. And this is your course history between 40 to 60, average finishing position. Probably not that bullish on Koepka, but if you want to use the ownership leverage play, yeah, Koepka might be your choice. Schauffele, I don't mind. I do like Bryson quite a bit here. I don't mind Abraham Ancer, although he won 2 weeks ago. So who knows? Maybe he has a little bit of a winner's hangover. Probably not. I do like Daniel Berger. I like Cam Smith. I like Joaquin Niemann. I like Niemann here a lot because he plays tough tracks really well. And I think this is kind of going to be a hybrid where it is a little tough, but you're also going to need to birdie. That seems right up his wheelhouse for Niemann. So I do like Niemann here at $8,100. You want to load up on your 8K golfers, that's a good choice. He's a low 8K option. And then the rest of the 7K golfers, we talked about some of these guys. The other ones we didn't. Sergio, Billy Horschel. We did talk a little bit about Bradley, Keegan Bradley. We also talked about Cameron Tringali. I kind of like Tringali here. Yeah, any of those options I think are just fine. Your course history 3 golfers is that 40 to 60 range. No, 60 to 80 range, sorry. And now we have Colin Morikawa, who's only played this event twice and has a missed cut and probably a 40th place, since that probably equals out to be 68.5. I wouldn't sleep on Morikawa. And out of this bucket, I mean, there are some good golfers. So Morikawa, English, Sungjae Im, those are pretty solid golfers. But you make the argument Mark Leishman is too. $7,200 isn't terrible. If he was a 6K golfer, I think he's an automatic play. I wouldn't say automatic, but it's reminiscent of, shoot, like a few years ago, I think he was $6,800 at the Waste Management Open or something like that. And it almost just felt like a free square, you know, where he was so cheap and he had the caliber of play to match the elites in that field, but he was kind of disrespected because of past, like, just recent form stats. So anyways, Mark Leishman kind of gives me those vibes right now when it comes to his $7,200 price tag, but I don't know. Up to you guys. And really the rest of these guys, 6K golfers are just dart throws, really. Pick one. I mean, I don't like to play more than 10% of a 6K golfer, so I'm probably going to stay by that rule again. It'll just be a hodgepodge of golfers to choose from. Yeah, that's going to recap the course histories, and then recent form golfers. Our number one bucket, I think, is that 20 to 40 range, right? Yeah, 20 to 40. 4 of our 10K golfers, DJ and Rory are in there. Now, obviously, I like Rory, so this works pretty decent with Rory. But then we have a bunch of 9 and 8K golfers that are really good choices. So yeah, it's really take your pick. If I go through recent form, 2 golfers, 3 of our 9K golfers are up here, all good choices. Patrick Reed's up there, another good choice. He's in that 8K range, which obviously, again, we kind of want to load up on. So I don't mind Patrick Reed. Fitzpatrick, Hatton, golfers we already talked about. There's Leishman again. Did not talk about Emiliano Grillo. I don't mind him. I think he's a decent play. Carlos Ortiz. I like Ortiz just in general. He's a very high quality player, and I don't mind him here. I think he's a decent play. And again, 6K golfers, again, it's a dart throw. I'm not going to spend too much time on them. Recent form 3s. Now we have 3 of our other 10K golfers here. And I don't mind this. And this is your 1 to 20 range, I believe. Yeah, 1 to 20. So this is your best recent form in the field. This is over the last 7 weeks, their average finishing position's under 20. And when you're 10K, you know, Spieth, Rahm, Morikawa, the choice is pretty darn. The choices are hard. Let's put it that way. And it doesn't seem like you can really pick anyone wrong. But to make choices a little bit harder, we also have Scheffler, we have Berger, even Paul Casey. We make the argument there, and that's pretty decent. So definitely good choices there. I think there's a bucket 4 that we were going to talk about that I forgot about. Was it last year 4s? Because it was like last year 3 didn't amount to 100. It was not last year 4s. Was it last year or last week 4s? No. Course history 4s? No. Recent form 4s? No. The heck? There was a 4 that had over 1. Was it this one? Because it was like a last year 3. You know what it could have been? It could have been the last week buckets. But because I had to update them, it updated the rest of them to equal out. And it makes more sense. Because it was a tie, right? Yeah. Last week 4, last week 3, that was a tie. It was did not plays from last year, right? Now I'm all over the place. Should have wrote it down. Oh well. Not too concerned. But yeah, that's your recap of the bucket system. And again, it's just a way to start your lineups with. Tomorrow in the strategy video, we'll hone in on these buckets, give you the anchor buckets that you want to choose from, which we kind of already covered, but we will start building lineups with those anchor buckets, and we'll try to create a pretty narrow core to pick golfers from. I finally did it last week. Like, I stuck to a core of 21, 22 golfers and finally made a profit. I shouldn't say like finally made a profit, like a decent profit. I think it was $40 up. So hopefully leading with that type of strategy will net those same results. That's probably fool's gold, but usually I like to just basically water down my ownership levels, just create max ownerships that I'll have of certain, like max exposures of certain players, and just let the optimizer do its work, or I'll hand build them based off of my own process. But it isn't really targeting certain players and making sure I play those players in X amount of lineups. It's just a percentage. Like it's almost the same thing, but it isn't. I play more golfers with a narrower, I should say more golfers. I play more shares of a golfer with a narrower core. So yeah, we'll do that tomorrow. We'll look at all that. We'll also look at all the tee time pairings, try to find our marquee tee time pairings, because obviously it's really good to start lineups that way. Obviously, it's going to be a lot of our elite golfers that are going to be in those marquee tee time pairings. So it's going to be a lot of the same, essentially. I just noticed that the video went to an hour long, which I was hoping this would be shorter than that. Shoot. Darn. Maybe we don't talk about golfers in those buckets going forward and just talk about the buckets. Like, this is who you should try to choose from. I don't know. I think going over the bucket or over golfers in the preview, you kind of have to. But yeah, tomorrow we'll narrow down that player pool. We'll create some lineups. I'll use the optimizer just to show you what some of the better lineups are, especially when we choose certain players to anchor our lineups around. And then Wednesday is the prize picks video. We'll go over my favorite prize picks plays. There is a link in the description. If you haven't signed up yet, click or copy that link, throw it in your browser, go to it, use code SweetSpot when you sign up. Helps me out, helps the channel out. Plus, I mean, I do have dreams to grow this channel, to grow my product, and would be great to have your support. So anyways, look forward to those videos this week. Again, tomorrow's going to be strategy, so be prepared to see that. Hopefully maybe earlier than you'll see this one. But either way, that's it for me. Thank you guys for watching. Please leave a like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, and I'll see you in that strategy video tomorrow. All right, bye.